I think you're going to find Lab 6 a little easier. There was a lot of copying involved. So be careful with where you're putting your brackets and doing stuff in there, okay? So we're going to develop our function called whoWon. And we're going to do an else statement with an if statement. We can combine them. So we're almost going to be done with this. And Lab 7 is really short. So this is the part we're zeroing in on in our flow chart. You see it's the first one. You know, in our whoWon function, it just tells the player who won the game. It's going to do this by looking at the values that you've stored in the board function. If it sees 3 X's in a row or 3 O's in a row, it's going to say who's the winner. So if player 1 has won the game, the whoWon function is going to return a 1. If a player 2 wins, it'll return a 2. If nobody won, it will return a 0. So we're going to declare our whoWon function. So you open up your game in the usual manner. First we find bool move is valid in our code. Then we declare whoWon. First we find move is valid, and then we're going to type in our function. We're going to find integer whoWon. So what are we going to do? We're going to return 0 if no one won, 1 if player 1 wins, and 2 if player 2 wins. So now that we've declared the whoWon function, we need to go complete these steps to write the whoWon function outside of the main function, so you have to scroll all the way down. Just come all the way down your code clear to the end. So what we're going to do here is test the first row across to see if it's going to be, if they're all going to be X's or O's. So what are we saying? If the first hole is equal to the second hole and the second hole is equal to the third hole, then what? We're just checking to see if they're the same. Now we're going to add the curly brackets for this if statement, and we're going to add a line after those curly brackets and type return equals 0. If we're returning a 0, that means that it was tied. Now pause this thing, take a quick double look at the code, see if it matches. Now we got to decide who won. We got to write the code that says X1 or Y1. So now we're going to go find out who won. We're going to add code to the whoWon function. This will find out who won the game by checking for an X. If there isn't an X, it must be an O. So inside the if statement in the whoWon function type, if board O is equal to X, now you're going to add the curly brackets for that if statement. And inside those curly brackets type return 1. So what are we saying? We're saying that player 1 won. What if player 2 wins? We're going to type in our else statement. Else return 2. Now your program is going to return 1 if there are 3 X's in a row at the top, and 2 if there are 3 O's in a row at the top, and 0 if neither player won that way. So now you're going to insert a while loop. You're going to find the sin line player 2 name, and add 2 lines under that, and then type while whoWon is 0. This line calls the whoWon function. So under that line you're going to type your opening curly bracket, And then you're going to go add a closing curly bracket all the way down just after the last of the switch cases. Now what you're going to do is you're going to indent your code so you can tell what's going on. All that code. You just click your indentation thing. Now what you do is you check your work, you run your debugger, and then when you're done you just click Start Without Debugging. And it should do something like this. Then you just try and get the top row because that's all you have coded. So he's going to pick a 0. The other guy's going to pick something else. He's going to pick a 1. Then the other guy's going to pick something else. He's going to pick the 2. Let's see if we got a win there. Yep, you got X's all the way across. That's what you're looking for. But if your code doesn't work, what do? Make sure that your code, pay close attention to your double equals and your single equals. Make sure that your whoWon function works. Make sure that you have put the closing bracket where it belongs. Double check that against this code right in here, okay? This is chapter 6, slide 9. So looking back at our design, we're looking at whoWon. So we're going to use an else-if statement to determine that. So if condition 1 is true, then player 1 won, right? Else, if condition 2 is true, then player 2 won. Or you might have a third else, and you could have else it's a tie. So you can have else-if statements there to determine certain conditions. It always follows of an if statement. It'll only run if the first if statement is false and the else if statement is true. You will use an else if statement later. The next step we do is we tell the user who won. You know, your program is going to stop if someone marks all 3 top spots to win the game, but it doesn't tell them who won. So we're going to make these steps to insert an if statement, an else if statement, and an else statement that will find out who won and let them know. So first off, we're going to find the last curly brace in the main function. Okay? It comes right after show board. And that's that command just before the line void show board. So it's all the way to the end of your main function. So you just scroll down there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start our if statement just before that by typing whoWon equals 1. Then we add our curly braces. And after the closing bracket of the curly brace, we're going to add an else if statement by typing else if whoWon is player 2. Okay, so if player 1 wins, we're gonna go see out player 1, your name, right, has won the game. And next thing we're going to do is we're going to add curly brackets for the else if statement inside those, and we're going to do the same thing pretty much. Else if whoWon is player 2. Then we're going to do our see out here. Well, we need your brackets first, right? We go put our see out statement. Player 2 has won the game. So now it's time for you to check your code. You save it, click your save button, then you run your debugger, and once you've run your debugger, you can start debugging and see if it works right. And it went. So that's what you're looking for. Winning statement that you won. So if your code doesn't work, what you do is you make sure that you've typed everything right, that you don't have all that much code to check. All right, it's just the one little piece. So double check it, make sure that you have everything. This is slide 12. Check it against here if it doesn't work. And like I said, it's that little piece of code that you've just done. It's not like you're going to have trouble finding everything. Now this is where all that copying I was telling you comes in earlier. Because how many ways are there to win tic-tac-toe? 8, right? So you have all these different combinations to write out. You can go across, you can go up and down, or you can have diagonals. So we want to make him to win more than just the top row, right? So now this is very easy. You're all the way at the bottom of the code. What you're going to do is you're going to copy all that stuff and right above the return 0. You're going to add code that checks to see if somebody got all 3 spots in the second row now. We've got the top row, now we're going to do the second row. And we're going to paste this code just above the return 0 line. So here you go. You're going to copy all this all the way down to there. Control C, then click there, then paste it. And now you're going to just change those numbers. We're going to be replacing those 1, 2, 0, 1, and 2 with 3, 4, and 5. So what we're saying here, we're saying if spot 3 on the board is the same as spot 4 on the board, in addition to spot 4 on the board being the same as spot 5 on the board, then that player wins, right? So now we got to change this to be one of these spots up here. See this board space here? We don't want it to be just some random spot. So this checks to see if the value of one of the winning spots is an X. If it is, then player 1 won the game. If not, then player 2 won. So we got to check our work again, right? So now we'll try for row 2, and we'll have this guy win. I said you won the game, so that's good. It's working. Now if it doesn't work for you, what do you do? So what do? You match your stuff against theirs and see if your answer matches theirs here on page 15. So now, of course, we do the same thing to add our last row. Now, if you had some mistakes, you had to fix it, you don't have it still saved in your Control V, you'd probably have to go and redo it. But you can remember, go back to where that if began. See that if up there and copy down to that last thing, that the last curly brace that has that box around it, just copy that, okay? It's not really hard. So, let me see. You find the whole whoWon function, copy everything inside the window, and then just paste it. And then you just change 6, 7, 7, and 8. Then you use one of the values, if board, right there, and you're all ready to run your last function. Once again, you run your function and check your work against here. This is slide 17. If it's not running, you make sure that you can do that last row until you don't have any bugs, okay? Just double check it if you've got bugs. Now we're going to add ways to win down. So we're going to add 3 more sections of code that will check for all the ways to win the game by getting a row that goes up and down. So we're going to paste another section of code just above the return 0 in the whoWon function, just where we've been before. Right before you're going to press a Control V to paste another section of code just before the line return 0 in the whoWon function. This will test for a straight up and down win. Do Control V. Now we're going to do spots 0, 3, and 6. Now we have 0 in there, so that's fine. Since board 0 is one of the winning spots in the section, you don't need to change it. Now, of course, we're going to paste another section of code just below that one, just before return 0. In this section of code, we're going to change the code to test for a win in spots 1, 4, and 7 down the middle. You'll need to use the 4 twice. Do this if you have trouble. In the same section of code, change the code so it will check to see if the value of the first spot 1 is an X. Then of course we're going to paste another section of code just below that one, right before the return O. In this section, we're going to change the code to test for a win in spots 2, 5, and 8. In the same section of code, we're going to change the code so we'll check to see if the value of the first spot 2 is X. And now, of course, we need to check our work. So, of course, you want to run your code to see if it will work up and down. Once again, if you have trouble with your code, just check it against the slide. Now we're going to check how you can win diagonally. So we're going to complete these steps to add a couple more sections of code that will check for both ways a player can win diagonally. So once again, we're going to do the Control V to paste another section of code just above the line return 0, back down in the whoWon function, right? And what we're replacing is spots 0, 4, and 8. This is a diagonal win. Now we've got one last section of code to paste. We're going to be testing for spots 2, 4, and 6. This is the other diagonal win. In the same section, we're going to change the code so it's checked to see if the value of the first spot of 2 is X. Then we're going to check our work. Now once you've tested your code against this final screen, you're all ready to go into Lab 7, and Lab 7's pretty short. I bet you're happy about that one. In Lab 6, we discovered 8 different ways to win the game and tell the player he won. What's Lab 7 all about? Lab 7, we're going to find out how to do a tie game. And basically, we're going to count the number of spaces filled to 9. So you've got here the increment operator. And you're going to do a couple new things here. So when do you have a tie game in tic-tac-toe? But nobody wins, right? That's all the spaces are filled and nobody's got 3 across, 3 up, 3 down, or 3 diagonally. So how we tell them that someone's won is we just increment the number of plays until we get to 9, and then we know it's a tie game. So what we're going to do is we're going to declare an int variable, an integer variable, okay? So we're going to go back up to the beginning of the main function to do this. This variable is going to keep track of how many times a player have played. We're going to find the local variable declarations in the program. Then we're going to declare an int variable called total moves. Don't forget that semicolon. Now remember, we got to have a placeholder in here, so we're going to initialize the variable with a value of 0. So what does that do? Remember that initializing will give you variable values when you declare it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit this while whoWon loop. You see it's just be right below the players entering their names here. So I'm going to put it right after the 0. So I'm going to go, my double pluses here, total moves, less than 9. So what are we saying here? That while somebody wins is equal to 0 and total moves is less than 9, you're going to go through the loop. So what do we add here? We add the plus plus operator. That means just add 1 as you go. So we have total moves is 4. Add 1 to it. The total moves will become 5 because as you go through the loop, you would add 1 every time with a plus plus. Or if it was minus minus, you subtract 1 every time. So they gave us an example problem here, right? In this example, int total is 0. So you have total plus plus, total plus plus, total plus plus. What does that equal? Well, if you add 1, 2, 3, what's your answer? Of course it's 3. Just think it through. Next thing we do is we find this line, move is valid move, right here. You can see it starts with that curly bracket. So now under this we're going to add 1 to total moves. So we just increment total moves. How do we do that? We write our total moves plus plus with a semicolon. Now I'm going to add an else statement. You complete the, you add the else statement. It will tell players it was a game if no one wins. So you find that else if statement that tells player 2 they won. Under the closing curly bracket of the else if statement, type else. So this is the third condition. Player 1 didn't win, player 2 didn't win, so now nobody won. So we're going to put out a cout saying they didn't win. So next we're going to add our brackets, the else statement, and then we're going to put our cout comment. It's the end of the game. Sorry about that. You know, it's the last thing you do when you do the system pause, right? But it's not the very end. It's the very end of the main function. So let's look at this. Come down to the end of the main function. And you write your system pause. Let's see, I was wrong. There it is. System pause up there. And of course you debug your code. You know how this is done. So once again, you go through the debugger and you just run your code. If there's some errors, you can find them. And if you need any help, come to a help session, give me a call, okay? And I'll see you after vacation. Bye.